undergirded by the power, the might, and the presence of the newborn babe. You've touched us individually. We've seen death, we've seen life, and we've seen a resurgence of hope. You would think that in this world that sometimes darkens itself, we are able to see glimmers of hope and possibilities, not only in this world of ours, but in this nation and in this city. In the midst of all of the violence and hate that continues to resurrect itself, municipalities everywhere, we pray for peace, we pray for harmony, and we pray for that kind of agape love that covers each of us. For those of us who sit around this table, and for those who are gathered in this room, for those staff members who give of their time, talents, gifts, and service, we pray especially for them. For those of us who will make decisions about the various and sundry needs of this city, we pray for us that your sensitizing spirit might be a ray of hope for each of us, for our mayor, for our city manager, for our chief, both fire and police, for those who stand in the trenches and sometimes trying to gather themselves in the midst of violence and chaotic circumstances. We pray for them today. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. However you term it, just remember, He is the reason for the season. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
You sure you're Methodist? That was Baptist 100%.
That was almost coach. You almost went
Well, I am saved and sanctified. I just happen to be a politician.
And concretized.
And concretized, fire baptized. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well done. Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
We will start off our city council discussion. Item number 1, the three-way stop control at Rickenbacker and Kilburn Road. Long time coming in this discussion, isn't it, Robert? Mr. Robert Anderson, Public Works Director.
I think it has been a long time coming, and before I get to this, I'm gonna change subjects a little bit and talk a little bit about Christmas cheer. So we are back on schedule for our yard trash collection. We will finish this week on schedule. So that's our Christmas present from Public Works. So
Well, I got 2 calls from the folks in Casey wanting to know if you could pick up their waste. It's been 90
I think Richland
days
County
since
may
they
be
got
calling you
picked up.
soon too. So, but we are back on schedule, and that's great news for our crews and the citizens of Columbia. So, as the city manager referenced, this issue's been that we're talking about today has been a long time coming, and I say long time, maybe 3 or 4 years coming. So, as part of a plan with Richland County, this is SCDOT. This is a DOT street. It's Kilburn Road. It's actually rated for about 30 miles an hour, and it's rated a major collector. So DOT, through many, many meetings, has given in on a 3-way stop. They're not still real excited about it, but they would like to place a 3-way stop at Rickenbacker and Kilburn Road. Lori, the traffic engineer over there, came to me a few weeks ago and asked me about it. So I reached out to Jim Reed with the Neighborhood Association, and he polled the Neighborhood Association, and he wanted to make sure that we're going to be okay with the signs and everything. So we've got about an 82% favored rating, 100% favored rating for the signs that would go in there. They're just asking for our support. If we support it, I'll send Lori a letter. They will actually erect these. I will say that yesterday I did receive an email from an individual that lives on Kilburn Road that has a laundry list of items that he would like considered. I have actually reached out and already talked to Lori. Lori will take those under advisement, but this is where we stand on
We're not
this so far.
supporting getting rid of a signal for a four-way stop. It just ain't happening.
Understood, sir.
Traffic, that is too important with the school there to go to a four-way stop. I appreciate the laundry list of stuff, and there's some things that they should consider, but, you know, this is the first time that DOT is actually trying to help us in this stretch, so I support it.
Good enough. We will send a letter to DOT and get it in the works. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Our next item for discussion is our communications plan. Ms. Alicia Utsi, Director of Public Relations, Media, and Marketing. You should have materials in either to be handed out. They were linked. But we made a few updates. I know there was some requests for some additional data
It
and
was like when we made
analytics.
hard copies as well.
Okay.
Okay, does everyone have a copy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Presenting this afternoon the communications plan. Thank you for the opportunity. I will start off with, I guess they said at the beginning. In April, when City Council had their retreat, there were 7 strategic outcomes that were selected by Council. One of those outcomes deals with communications. As a result of that, this plan will reflect what has been done since April and what is continuing to be done to achieve that strategic outcome. The next statement is a statement directly from the retreat as a result of Council's work. As a result of increased communications and outreach, Columbia is a proud city that is diverse, resilient, and inclusive. We embrace innovation, new ideas, and collaboration with our partners and community. Our community is engaged, empowered, and informed, giving us a strong sense of purpose and belonging. Based on that directive, this action plan has been developed in order to be responsive to Council's strategic outcome as it relates to communications. These are also some of the requests that various city council members mentioned during the retreat. The department will work to ensure that the city has consistent communications that convey a message of who we are as a city and help people, citizens, residents, know who we are. Emphasis will be placed on developing marketing and media initiatives that tell the story of Columbia and its commitment to being an inclusive and resilient city. The city's commitment to being open to investments and new opportunities will be highlighted. Streamline communications, materials, and develop consistency by eliminating different logos and formats. Include influencers in our messaging initiatives to help highlight our activities, people, and events. Consolidate and streamline social media platforms across city departments under one social media umbrella. Assess the communications tools, newsletters, and other publications being used by city departments to ensure that we are including consistent messaging to help the city tell our story. Review user lists that are being used by various departments for communication purposes to determine who is receiving information. Efforts will be made to increase the number of stakeholders and media influencers in our database in order to expand our messaging. Use transparency to explain when there are problems and share information with the community about why these problems are occurring and the solutions that are being researched and implemented. Share messaging with internal staff in order to empower them as communications ambassadors, increase efforts for community engagement and citizen empowerment to share messaging, provide education materials, and seek opportunities to inform them about city initiatives, operations, and new opportunities. Consolidate communications functions / staffing. In response to this, the following action steps have been taken and some are ongoing. In September of this
sorry.
year,
Just
Yes,
a
ma'am.
quick question. The list of outcomes and requests, were these from individual council members or, because I don't think we went over these as a whole?
some of these came out of the retreat session in April.
Okay.
Some of these were forwarded to staff through the city manager after the retreat.
Okay.
So there's a combination. Some of these have been completed, some have not. For example, the social media platforms have been consolidated under one umbrella in our department. The review of the user list that has been done with various departments that have newsletters. So we've done that with OBO, Economic Development, Community Development, Columbia Water, Parks and Recreation, to look at who's receiving information.
We can come back to it though, because I was going to say, because that was one of the things I would not have supported that. I think that isn't helpful with the social media aspect. However, I want to hear the rest of the report first.
Okay?
And yeah, and I'd just like to come back to what you all found in terms of the types of stakeholders that the newsletters are going out to. The different
Actually,
Can I-
that was shared with council several months ago. The user list, came in, and we sent those back out.
Can we
to Ms.
let
Wilson.
Alicia finish going through this, and then let's go back from page 1, because I think everybody's taking notes and has questions, and then we can go through that. I think that'd be easier for everybody to keep up with.
Okay. All right. Moving on to action steps that have actually been implemented and are continuing to be implemented. Again, in September of this year, just a couple of months ago, there were 2 communications staff that were transferred to our department, one from Parks and Recreation and one from Columbia Water. They are part of our department now, working out well, and we have actually been able to identify their skill sets in order to make those useful to our department across the city. One of them would have been with us today, Kevin Crawford. However, he was exposed to COVID and did not want to expose everyone else, so he is not present, but he is actively working behind the scenes. Our other employee is Ryan Cohen from Columbia Water, and she's actually on our staff and transferred to us along with Kevin during the same time period. Media coverage reports are forwarded to council on a daily basis and to executive management. Basically, it's an assessment of any media coverage that has been covered for the city of Columbia, including all departments and public safety and Columbia Water. Highlighting our major city projects and initiatives will be a key communications role for our city leaders, which we have focused on. If there are various initiatives that have been announced and media has a vested interest, we've reached out to various council members who either sponsor those projects or are the chairpersons for those committees. Also, we've looked at highlighting information coming out of the city council meetings. We have done this through city council highlights, which are being shared with council after every council meeting. There's a process during our agenda review where Ms. Wilson has asked all assistant city managers to please forward to me any items from the agenda that they feel should be highlighted or might attract or draw media attention, or where they've had media inquiries. We then compile that information, send it out after the meeting to make sure that the items have been voted on. We share that with media, but also the general public. We also post it on all of our platforms, website, social media, etc. We also have been recording Mayor Rickerman, and he actually does a video version of the city council highlights. Normally those recordings are either on Mondays or Tuesday mornings, and then we push that out after the meeting, and he shares with the general public what council has been working on and what they have voted on during that particular meeting. So we actually have been doing this through written communications, but also video content. We're looking at expanding our use of QR codes, which we've already done. This is helping with printing costs, and it also helps with citizens who want access to information but may not want hard copies. So our QR codes are very usable, accessible. We make them available at all of our events, at information tables, et cetera. And basically, you can just scan a code and get a copy of any of our brochures, publications, fact sheets, et cetera. For 2023, we're going to implement a similar process to increase messaging for our city council committees. Basically, pushing out information after each council committee meeting to highlight either work that has been done, initiatives, et cetera. This will also help us as we move into our council highlights, and we can help the public follow the process from the committee standpoint and process all the way through full approval by council during our council meetings. A strategic initiatives microsite has been developed and is front and center on our website on the homepage. We have actually used this to highlight some of the more trendy or hot topic items coming out of council and out of the city. For example, we've been tracking our We Are Open messaging since January with Mayor Rickaman and the opening of various businesses. We have highlighted the launch of the business-friendly initiatives as well. More recently, Rapid Shelter Columbia, we've tracked the development all the way to the actual opening, and we're also adding information to help highlight what is actually happening with our operations at the center. Our online food map is also being added. That was actually implemented through work by council and our food policy committee. And we will continue to add more information throughout the process. And for some of those initiatives that were a little older before we started this microsite, we'll add our gun lock initiative. We're adding our public education efforts about diabetes awareness, et cetera. So we'll continue to add information as we move forward. For public and citizen engagement, which was another request from council from the retreat, we've actually started a process where we have a staff member who is front and center at, I say if not all, the majority of our neighborhood meetings and community events. That's Veronica Walker. And she definitely makes the rounds. I don't think she misses many meetings. And it's a perfect fit for her because she's the ideal person for this, because she loves people, they love her, and she loves sharing information about the city. So that has been working well. Also, we're focusing on looking for additional opportunities to engage the public, not only at city events, but also at events that are not sponsored by the city. So we can get the information out to others about what we're doing, how we're operating, and some of the highlights for our various projects. For social media, we are using all public events to actually encourage everyone to follow us on social media. We're going to start using QR codes and actually having them placed at various city buildings, so it's easier for people to just scan the QR code so they know how to easily follow us on social media. Also, we are adding messaging on our social media platforms, asking people to follow us on the opposite platforms. So if you're on Facebook, you'll see an invitation to follow us on Twitter and Instagram, et cetera. Also for social media messaging, we're still working with our public safety departments and Columbia Water to share or retweet information as needed, especially emergency information. So we're all working as a team to make sure that we are sharing information across our various platforms and across departments. And just some forecasting for 2023 as we move into the first quarter. We're actually working now to ask departments to share information with us about what they want to highlight for 2022. So as we kick off January 2023, we're going to do a 2022 in review so that we can tell our story about 2022. Of course, we're going to wait until after the holidays for that because people are sort of tapped out right now. And in February, we have a social media engagement campaign called Love Columbia. And as we move into March and the spring, we have a full-scale public education campaign about community pride and beautification. This will be a follow-up, actually, to what we've done with code enforcement, which we started in a 1-month process, but the information was so well received, and various communities, neighborhoods wanted information, we actually extended it for 2 months. So we're gonna pick up where we left off and go into beautification and also our community pride campaign.
Ms. Herbert, would you want to start? We'll just start at the top of the table.
Yes, and I kind of said it earlier. I think that one of the concerns that I had, and I just kind of missed this when we did this, but consolidating all of the social media platforms, to me, and maybe it's because of my experience with OBO, but social media is definitely about engagement. And while we can put the information out there, if people aren't, what's the word? If people aren't liking it and if people aren't sharing it, then we're not necessarily engaging folks. And so my concern was that, I guess after this was done, we had so many followers on the city site and we had so few on some of the other ones. And I'm not picking on OBO, but I'm just using OBO because that happens to be the one that I have. And so what I explained is if we have 20,000 followers on a particular platform with the City of Columbia and they get 2 or 3 likes versus, let's say OBO only has 250 followers, but if they get, let's say 30 likes, the percentage of engagement is so much more significant in that platform. And it is because the OBO folks, and this is not a preference to anybody or anything, the OBO folks don't want to adopt dogs necessarily. A lot of times they are really looking for specific information. They don't want to get the broader information. And so I think that in making that transition, we may have lost some people and some engagement. So that's what I just wanted to kind of put that out there. And we talked, I might have talked to a couple of you all about that earlier, but that is probably my bigger concern, at least with the social media, is that people, we have different targets and different niches, and we need to allow those departments to target what they want to target.
And I think too, Councilwoman, one of the things that Leisha was asked to do, and I took away from the retreat, was an emphasis on data and analytics. And so when the analytics was done on, for example, OBO, since we're talking about it, what it showed was, and I'm not the social media person, so
no,
I have to let
So
Leisha.
I read it. No, but I did
Yeah.
read it. So we were talking about there's particular trends for how often you need to do it to meet the industry standards for different
Right.
types of platforms. However, at the end of the day, the end goal of all of that is engagement.
Correct.
And so even if you don't do you need to do 2 times a day on Facebook, but you do 1 or 5 times and you have high engagement, you're meeting the purpose of social media. And so that's my thing, using a platform and making sure it's effective.
Yes.
As opposed to following rules, but then not having the engagement.
And so I wanted to get the context because I think with this council and us take the takeaways from the retreat, many of you are given different perspectives and insight on it. I think the takeaway from the retreat was to dig deep and double down on the data and the analytics, which I think she did that. And by doing that, there were certain directives that she ran by me and I approved. So that's on me. I approved that one in the effort to streamline. But I do think that if that is the will of the council, which is why we're here today, to make sure we're hearing from everybody, to engage and make sure not just data or analytics are driving engagement. I mean, that we're here to get the feedback.
Right.
So I hear you loud and clear.
And-
But
and
that,
trust me, I'm
that
all about
was,
data.
she did do what
Yeah.
I think came out of, overarching what came out of the directive from the retreat.
I don't remember that particular part. But again,
Okay.
yeah, the consolidation of the platforms.
I
But
gotcha.
that would probably be the area that I probably had the most heartburn about. And maybe what we can do is do an analysis. So we see what
Sure.
happened this, however many months we've been doing this.
Yep.
And then see if we go back to the other method, with the engagement. Because at the end of the day, it's all about are we engaging people?
And I
And I
heard a
think
lot of
this-
feedback as well
Yeah.
when we made the change about, I guess, removing some of OBO's platforms, consolidating from that segment, I guess, of the community that utilizes them. And we're very used to the OBO platform. So we're open to doing whatever's best.
And I'm not extending that to websites and all of that. I'm just saying social media platforms,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Going around the table.
Okay.
Ms. Houston, let me just say a word, because all of what you proactively talked about today, we talked about in our retreat, and of course, this in itself gives me indication that one of the things that I raised during the retreat, and I think all of you are aware of that, and that was to make sure that we are telling our story. That was the thrust. I think what has taken place is that there has been a genuine and sincere effort to tell our story. Now, how we form that and configure that comes in a variety of ways, I think. But it seems to me that in order to tell our story is to do essentially what you sort of identified in some of these things, some of these bullet points. One of the things that I was just impressed about was that when we talked about our business initiatives, there was a real push in the community for those initiatives to be out there, for folk to hear them, to understand them. And from what I gathered was that folk were they heard those things and they responded to those things very favorably. There are several other things. I mean, gee whiz, I'm not a social media person other than Facebook, and I do more trolling than anything. I think this gives us an indication that the story is being configured. It's continuing to roll itself out into areas where folk are really hearing and sensing what is taking place in our city. The other thing that, of course, I wanted to mention was the whole issue of the food service map. We didn't have that, but of course that became a reality within our city. Folk were able to hear that, sense that. Our food policy committee was able to help in configuring that. So I think we're on a good plane in terms of telling our story. Now, if we don't tell our story,
Ed, please talk in the microphone.
I
People
am.
can't hear you on.
I am.
No, you're not.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Thanks for picking up Verizon and getting rid of AT&T.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me apologize for that. Should I start over again?
No.
That was a resounding. That was a resounding.
I figured that I would get that no. I figured I would get that. So
You got one eye from me, but I'm overruled.
thank you, Ms. Yuti. Let's tell our story. And this, of course, gives us an opportunity to continue proactively to tell that story. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Yuti.
Mr. Duvall?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two things. One of them I talked about last meeting. Just want to put in another plug for Veronica Walker. I covered the South Kilburn neighborhood the other night, and she did a wonderful job of telling them about a lot of the things, telling the story of the city of Columbia, much of which I did not know. The events that she was telling about were a lot of them were new to me, and I wanted to suggest to the city manager that maybe 5 minutes in the front of a work session sometime, we let her maybe once a month do her show, just to show the whole council what she does, and she's always at a meeting. I mean,
Excellent.
whatever you go to that's got City of Columbia connected or even not connected, she's there working. As far as my comment on the report today, Alicia, when I was working, we had a program at one of our Southern Municipal Conference IT meetings on monitoring social media. The company actually was the daughter, owned by the daughter of a friend of ours that y'all probably know lives here in Columbia. And her business was getting clients a city. A lot of them were like Tampa, Florida, and she would monitor the social media connected to Tampa, Florida, so that if they started talking about hurricanes, she could respond, or get the PR department in Tampa to respond in real time to get down rumors that might be started. I think this would be especially true on Columbia Water. If we had a good monitor on the social media platforms around Columbia, my assistant, AKA my wife, monitors the social media, and she will come in maybe once a week and say, you need to respond to this thing, and it's usually something false being put out about Columbia Water. And if we don't have that capability, I think we need to look into getting it, because if we could be proactive in responding to some of the rumors that get started on these social media platforms, I think it would help us.
Before I pass it on, I just want to, for the record, she's not your assistant, she's your boss. I just want to put that on the record.
That's right.
Taylor?
I will agree.
I would second the mayor's comment just then. Couple of questions real quick. First off, I want to make sure I understand this report. Does this list most of the things that y'all have already started since September? Is that correct?
Actually, since May.
Since May, okay.
Right, we started after the retreat.
I said September, I meant April. I'm sorry
Okay.
for that. So, okay. I mean, here a couple of questions, and just a couple of thoughts. I appreciate you outlining the changes that you made in staffing wise. It would be helpful for me, and I think most of council, if we had an organization chart, just so we knew who was there and what and so forth, and how the staff was kind of configured today. I mean, just so we understood the impact of those changes, if that makes sense. That's number one. Number two, and I'm just going to be totally candid. I want to concur with Reverend McDowell. I don't get the feeling yet that we're telling our story. I mean, I have to be candid with you. I think we're doing some really, really cool things. And while I appreciate Skylar being here, but some of these should be regional or national stories, and we're just not getting the publicity. I think, very candidly, I think the city manager's program on the Rapid Housing Center and the pallet houses should have been an East Coast story. And it wasn't. I mean, it shows us being productive and moving forward and addressing problems in entrepreneurial ways, which I think are important today. And I think there are other things like that. I know we have experienced Columbia on one side on the tourism side, but again, things like the South Main Street project that's getting ready to do, I just don't think the story's getting told. I think stories about our successful businesses in Columbia that we have that are national leaders just aren't getting told. And I think when we talk about PR and we talk about marketing, it's about telling the stories. I mean, sometimes I think we have to write the stories and shop them to these publications. I think the fact that we have, Mayor, you correct me if I'm wrong, but 58,000 college students in the downtown Columbia is a hell of a story that just ain't getting told. And that's how one of the ways we're going to attract our people to come invest in this community and things like that. I think, again, so I really do, I missed in the proposal the proactiveness of generating publicity and recognition for the city outside of the city limits. Second, I want to kind of touch on something that Ms. Herbert said too, and something that Mr. Duvall said. I think when it comes to things like social media and especially Instagram and Facebook, that
that we should segregate our accounts, some for marketing and some for notifications, and there may be different purposes. And I would encourage you to look at subcontracting out managing our social media like Mr. Duvall was talking about. I mean, one thing again that we have in Columbia, South Carolina that amazes me is the talent when it comes to social media, you know, getting that message out. And frankly, it's not too terribly expensive. I think it would probably save us some money, but they bring a different type of photography and a different type of messages that get you excited about, you know, again, get you excited about the city. And I mean, whether it's the, you know, I'm not going to call any company names, but I've been unbelievably impressed by the social media entities that we have that are in the business of doing that. And I think embracing those folks that frankly, and I don't mean this in a negative way, is I do think, and I've learned this since I've been on city council, that people who are outside of City Hall see the city sometimes different than those of us do in the city. And having the message come from people who aren't in here with us all the time, I just think it brings an energy and excitement. And speaking of energy and excitement, again, I'm going to ask the question that I asked back at the retreat. You have to look at the material we're pushing out, and you got to ask yourself, does this make me excited? Does this make me want to be there? And if the answer is no, then you got to change it. And I just got to tell you, I'm not so sure that I've seen a remarkable change in our structure, our graphics, and our messaging really since May. And again, I think bringing in some subcontract social media folks, maybe even contracting out some graphics, would just broaden our message and really get it lift up. But I do think, Reverend, you're correct that we have to tell our story. I mean, sometimes I hate to use the analogy, but we sit in the valley, surrounded by Greenville and Charlotte and Charleston and Atlanta, and we got to go to the top of the mountain. And we got to yell as loud as we can that we got it happening here. You know, that our conditions are right, that we're making moves to fix our property taxes here and make them competitive. I mean, that should be something we're beating on our chest about. And I just think that's that, along with a little bit better messaging, a little bit better graphics, I think would do wonders for us.
Mayor, can I ask a question that's directly related to Councilman Taylor's? Because I'm actually interested in the rapid shelter and the attention that it got. I just wanted to ask, what is our process? Like when we put it out, does it go to like no local press release? Is this an appropriate question? I just want to know what we do, like in that example, because I know that I usually send press releases out, but I have a list that's local. I don't know if we send stuff out outside of the region.
We do send out to our local media. We also have the AP on our list. And a lot of times they pick up stories that they can then distribute, you know, on a national basis. And believe me, constructive criticism, I'm open to it. We have no problem with expanding our reach, with actually pitching stories to national publications.
Gotta push it.
Right, we have to push it. As we talk about some of the staffing, Ms. Wilson and I have had a conversation, and because of the staffing that we now have, I'm actually pushing more of the department load as far as because basically we support all city departments to staff who have been here for a while, who are seasoned, who could actually help do the work that's needed to help them communicate. And that will free me up to do exactly what Mr. Taylor has pointed out. I can dedicate my time to the bigger picture, the national outreach, the national stories, working with either outsourced companies or working with national media outlets to tell our story beyond Columbia and beyond South Carolina, beyond this region. So it's a time-consuming process to actually support departments and support other initiatives. So in order for me to forecast to make those contacts, to work with outside entities to make that happen. We now have staff who are seasoned. Justin, who was just in the room, he's actually back. He's been with us 8 years, and he's definitely capable of helping our departments with their requests as they come in on a daily basis for PR and media assistance. There's also Kevin Crawford, who, again, is not with us today because of COVID scare. He's been with us in PR, actually transferred to Parks and Recreation for several years and handled PR for them, and is now back in PR as part of the consolidation. So with that being said, that would give me the time, the focus that I can now dedicate to some of the things that you're actually sharing with me this afternoon.
I appreciate that, and just as a follow-up, and I would just say, in particular, like on something like Rapid Shelter, you got to send a media kit out, and you got to send the photography out. Lots of times you got to write the article. I mean, I think I just would say, look at this room. I mean, the diversity around the table and in the room. This is a hell of a story. I mean, we need to push this out. I would tell you, I hope you got the great time to do it. If not, maybe we need to look at bringing in or retaining a PR firm as part of our program here. Our police chief just got elected the chairman or president of the Law Enforcement Association. That's a hell of a story for us. I mean, I'd like for every police officer in the state of South Carolina to know before it's over with that our guy is the man this year. And it's just, you got to push it.
You're the man.
Correct on that, right? You are the man, right?
But aren't we, may I just,
Go ahead.
may I just follow up just a minute? I think if we're going to tell our story, we can't tell the story individual. It has to be a collective, collaborative story. And I think that's what you're saying, Ms. Yutzi, is that if that story,
Mike, please.
if that story is going to be one that is going to expand itself nationally, in our city, worldwide, if we're going to do that, then it has to be a collaborative story. Now, you can be one of the push-out agents to do that, but other entities, I would think,
I agree,
has
yes.
to be collaborative enough so that the story is pushed out with some power and with some force. So I'm not sure whether or not, and of course, it's going to take some additional conversation, whether or not we need to look at a PR firm, something similar to that. I think it's a refocusing of our story and to collaboratively make that story work for everybody.
Yes, sir. And there are firms that have those national relationships.
So I know, Ms. Yutzi, you and I met early on in the process, given that this is an area that I'm pretty passionate about and probably the most active social media user out of all of my colleagues. So, I am somebody who was very much in favor for cleaning up our social media accounts, given that they were all different handles that were really hard to find. You had terms and things being used that the outside user would have no idea. One example of that is Columbia Compass. No one knows what that is unless you're in the planning department, right? And so there are a lot of accounts that unless you were an insider with the city, you weren't going to find them. And when we look at other national or city examples, Henderson, North Carolina, I looked at their site a couple of days ago. There's only 5 accounts. They have their city account, emergency notifications account, fires, their police department, and water and sewer. And I think that goes back to what Councilman Taylor was saying, is there has to be a clear delineation between updates and stories that we're sharing on the main site, and then some of those more, I think, timely or urgent updates that need to be given to citizens, whether it's around some of those essential personnel or things that are happening in the city that people need to know about quickly. And I also think that we should be, using those 5 accounts in different ways on different platforms. There really shouldn't be a duplication of the same exact message on Twitter and Facebook, given that they have two very different algorithms and two very different audiences. Facebook, it takes a good hour or two for it to show up on your page. Twitter, it happens immediately. So maybe that's where we focus on some of those more emergency updates as opposed to some of the other platforms being content updates. One of the things that I think we consistently struggle with is, what is our message? We don't frame things in a way that gets people excited to want to interact. One example that I shared with City Manager Wilson was when Asia Wilson came into town and did the basketball court. I mean, we do posts that are like hashtag happening now, but people may not see that until 4 or 5, 6 hours later, and the event has already happened. And we maybe put one sentence in about the project's name, and that was it. So for someone who's coming, who's potentially either wanting to move to Columbia or wants to get involved with the city, there's nothing there for them to really understand why that was such a big deal that we had a WNBA player invest in her hometown. And I think that when we audit some of our posts, whether it is on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, that is really where I think there's an area for improvement, is we're not keeping up with best practices in terms of engaging our key audiences. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about who we define that as, but also making sure that we recognize that those real-time updates don't necessarily make sense on every single platform, given how, some interactions are going to be delayed. And then, in addition to that, I think it's important for us to be very intentional about what we post and how we post in terms of photos, because people are visual, and a good way to tell their story as well is being very intentional about what we're trying to say. People spend maybe 2 seconds on a post, and we want them to be able to get the most out of it. So when we're posting an empty podium, for example, that's telling the story that the mayor is late for someone who's, just quickly scrolling. We have to be very, very, very clear on why we're posting that, right? And I think that that's an area that we continue to struggle with a little bit. And then I would say that, one of the things that we had also talked about is kind of that cross-training versus specialized skills. I think that there are certain things that you can't be cross-trained in, and that's things like graphic design, photography, those very unique skills that people either go to school for or are intentionally working in that field for many, many years. And I think that if we focus on keeping people that have specific skills in the department, I think that'll allow us to improve some of those pieces, especially as, other council members have also talked about wanting to see that change. And then finally, I think one question that I had was, I'd just like to hear a little bit more about, our marketing approaches. I know PR is telling our story as council in the city, but marketing is really focused on getting people excited about why their local government is so unique and cool, or why living in Columbia is so wonderful because of the initiatives that we're creating. And so, I think that that's an area that we should have some more conversations about, what's our key audience? What are our key messages? What is our outreach plan in terms of getting people excited about Columbia? I love the idea of the hashtag Love Columbia social media campaign, but, given that right now there may not be as much engagement as we like, how do we plan to do this by leveraging Experience Columbia or COLA Today or some of these other platforms that I think exist that we're not leveraging to its full amount? And then, looking at analytics and engagement, and I think I requested that information because it is very telling. It's not just how many people engaged, but how they're engaging. And some of that goes back to, again, what are we known for and what are our key messages?
Yes, Ms. Uzi, thanks so much for pulling all this together. One quick question. Do you manage the COLA Water account?
I do not. That's actually Columbia Water staff. As she mentioned, when we consolidated public safety, both fire, police, and Columbia Water were allowed to keep their social media platforms. And those are also 3 departments that actually still have communication staff.
Gotcha. And I guess my reason for that was, how can we do a better job expanding our customer service options through our social media? Something to look into. Pointing customers to our chat, which I think our chat options are very popular now. But you do get a lot of input from social media on our utility, our service issues. So any way to connect the dots there, I would encourage you to please do that.
Absolutely. Clint and I will have a discussion and meet with his communication staff, and we can definitely make that happen.
I think, I just wanted to, oh, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead, Ms. Herbert.
And I talked to Ms. Utsi about this a little bit, differentiating the marketing aspect of what we want versus the PR aspect. And I think that we may need to look at, I agree at looking at a consultant or someone to help market with a particular emphasis, because all this stuff that we're saying, I don't know. That's a lot. That's all I'll say. I'm
It
say
is
it's
a lot.
And I also like hearing about how people on the outside see things differently, because we're in the run of the mill and we don't really emphasize it. So I just wanted to say that I agree with looking at marketing totally different than the run of the day things that we're doing with our things.
Just to follow up on that, well, I think I lost him. We actually have another packet for you, but it's a lot thicker. So if you don't want the hard copy, it is linked on Minute Track. But in response to trying to give you more of a visual of what we actually deal with in our department, we compiled our monthly reports from May until November to show you exactly what we deal with on a monthly basis. Requests from departments, requests from outside entities, yes. Okay. And if you don't want the paper, it's on Minute Track. If you do want the hard copy, we can share one with you. It's entirely up to you. But when you look at it in its entirety, it is going to require outsourcing to get where we were trying to go, because we do handle quite a huge volume of workflow every month. And all of it's important, and all of it needs to be done. So, again, there's definitely room for outsourcing, for using other agencies, for outsourcing some of the marketing, and for partnerships. I don't think we do enough with Experience Columbia. We have a good working relationship, we're cordial, but I think we need to do more hand in hand to actually market our city. So,
Ms. Houston, let me just ask one other question, because I think this is important. I mean, there was a study a couple of years ago by the Knight Foundation that rated Columbia as one of the least informed communities in America. And frankly, I'm delighted that Skylar's here, and I know we're broadcasting this, but I've been surprised by the lack of media presence at council meetings. Things. One of the reasons we talked about doing the summary of council afterward, almost like a press release, was to get the messages out there of things that we're changing. I mean, what can we do? I mean, first off, what can we do to get our local media more engaged and letting the public know about what's happening at council? You know, I bet you Skylar's going to write a story, but let me tell you what Mr. Anderson said to open the meeting up, that this year we've handled all that. That's a good story that should be out there. They wrote plenty of stories when we didn't pick it up. So let's write one when we do. But I really think I think your department has got to engage with our local TV stations. We got to engage with our reporters who cover us, but we also have to engage with the publishers too. I believe the mayor's invited the publisher of a newspaper that's known as our local paper, and I don't know if we've been able to get him up here to meet with us yet. It's been a year. So, I mean, I really do think we've got to work on building our communication, and I'm going to make a word up, Ed, our communicational relationships.
He's got one, don't worry.
But you follow what I'm saying. Work with our relationships so we get more coverage on these things. Like I say, Skylar does a great job. Again, she's here at almost every meeting. WLTX comes fairly often. Watch Fox comes fairly often. I don't think I've seen WIS-TV at one of our council meetings, but maybe once or twice this year. Yeah. So
Well,
again, so I think that's part of what we got to do is building that excitement up. I mean, we got to give our local media folks some things to talk about other than murders, car wrecks, and fires. Sorry, Chief.
You know,
I'll
the
say
other
a few things about that.
Yeah.
First of all, I'll be honest with you.
Respect that.
And no offense, Skylar, but this is from media folks for over the years. If it bleeds, it leads.
That's right.
But they created that, so
Yes.
that's not an excuse.
But it's like for us to push the positive news and good stories. And I'll give you an example. A reporter contacted us. We're about to work on a positive story about the city. Got there, unloaded equipment, set up, about to interview staff. Got a call from their station to leave because there was a chase going on in the county. And they're like, it's breaking news. So basically, he apologized. He's like, I'm sorry. We only have 2 reporters working today, and the other one's in Orangeburg, and I've been called off this story. It's happened more than once. It's happened quite a few times. As the mayor and I have had discussions before about how they schedule appointments, they come, they say they're going to actually do interviews, and the next thing you know, their producers or editors are telling them to go somewhere else. So again, we have to do a better story ourselves of telling our story, but also try to keep that working relationship with media. I know that some media outlets are struggling with staffing. Not all, perhaps. We always are happy to see Skylar here and any of our other reporters, but some of them are dealing with staffing issues. And it may take us actually providing them with video content next, not just the information, but also video content, photos, etc., when we actually have things going on to help them tell the story. I think the more we can do to help them tell the story, the better. So I don't mind. We've got video content, we've got photos that we can share with media and push out easily and make them accessible on a Google link, a Google Drive to like download whatever they need to help them tell the city story. So we will start making that offer to all media outlets as well. And then I love Robert. He knows that. Sometimes it's a matter of we have to tell our own story to each other. I'm glad you made the announcement, but I think that's kind of thing that, yeah, tell PR about the good news. We're always ready to like respond about the negatives or try to explain ourselves, but I think more department heads, more division heads, if it's positive news, tell me. I don't know unless they tell me. But I mean, I agree, and that will be something that we push out today and that we share with the community because, believe me, we heard from them loudly when it wasn't going in the other direction. But I think sometimes once we solve problems, and I know Clint's over there because he's the last one to toot his own horn about anything, sometimes in Columbia Water. But I mean, when we do something great, we're hesitant to put that out there. So we have to do a better job internally.
Well, one of the things, Mr. Mayor, may I?
You may.
And of course, I think Mr. Taylor has something that I think is valuable. The other piece of that, of course, is you invite the 5 media outlets. Folk aren't going to come to your council meetings unless there is a real burning hot issue. Should I say what those issues are? They're going to be there. They're going to be there, of course, for budget. They're going to be there for some that has happened at CPD. It's going to be other instances. That old saying say you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I think collaboratively, if we could at least extend that invitation, it makes our job a little bit more tedious. But of course, if the 4 media outlets don't come, that's not really a reason for us not to be very proactive and collaborative in our approach to getting that news out. It seems to me, and maybe I'm just one of these guys who don't read, or I read the paper, good grief. It just doesn't seem to me at this point that we're in such a valley that we can't climb out of. And that if we're going to make this collaborative, we need to make it collaborative and not saying to the 5 media outlets, we're going to report, we're going to make it positive, because all of the negative news when it hits chamber, they're going to be here. All right.
I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said because a lot of great points. But the reality is, I do think we're at a juncture that we're out kicking our coverage, for lack of a better term. There's too much going on there that we can't market and get the messages out because there's so much internal. I think we're trying to do too much, and I do think this is the time. We've got great, talented people in our community for social media, PR, and marketing, that bringing in somebody to help be part of the team and take some of that off, because it does take an outside look. If you look at a lot of the communities that are now marketing their cities for people to live here, to recruit officers, employees, and everything, they're using outside agencies because we do sometimes get lost in the inside bubble. And I think that was a very good point that was made earlier. And I think it's clear that we've got so much going on that we can't get over that hump. We need that outside eyes to join. So I think we really need to consider getting those pieces done and getting it from the perspective of people who are looking into City Hall, not out of City Hall, if that makes sense.
We're very appreciative, Mayor and Council, of the opportunity to share the plan. Lots of great input came from the retreat, and since then, you know, just candidly speaking for me and the conversation that I've had with Leisha, and being that she and I both have been here a minute at the city, her longer than me, actually, coming up on 25 years, I believe. You know, we get comfortable, all of us do sometimes, with the model that we've had. That has nothing to do with the capability to do things differently and to be the, I think you said the agent, I don't know if you said the change agent or what term you used, but the, I guess, challenge, directive, push that I've given Leisha, because I believe that she is quite capable to do it. I don't think with the input that you've given us collectively that we can continue to do it the same. And I think the same would be her not being as present, or the same would be, yes, she knows that to do everything you just talked about requires a certain presence. And so an encouragement by me that if you do have some very seasoned individuals, two fairly young men, but I've been around them now a minute to know that they're very capable, who can, if you don't have a deputy and all that, but who can step up and have expectations to keep the balls rolling in the air as they should, because they have an understanding of city departments and our city team, then give them the autonomy to work with the other members of the team. And I think Mr. Taylor is right. That was something we should have included, the actual organizational chart itself, so we could see the restructure. But that's kind of where we've spent a lot of time on that, because I think, for one thing, for her to be able to push national stories and be present with local media and ask for engagement and insist on it, for all these great things happening in the city, she has to be the one to help us do that, with the mayor being the face of it and many of you with your different initiatives. But that's a daily thing in and of itself. There's something that came up today that the mayor's been coming back and forth over to my office, giving me feedback about something going on that might take a life of its own. I don't know if it will or won't. But those are the times when she's got to have the flex and the flexibility to move. And some of these internal things, like a Robert story, that's a great one that needs to be told. Justin and Kevin are quite capable of getting that done while she's focusing on some other things. The additional piece would be using the local talent that we have for social media and marketing, as y'all have expressed an interest in doing. We need to budget accordingly for that, obviously. That's always my reminder. But it can be done. And I think between that three-legged stool, to me, outside partnerships, internal staff being directed the right way, and you all's faces and policy-driven initiatives, I think we can make a difference here if given the opportunity. So we are taking back everything that you've shared again. And Leisha, did you have anything else?
I have very detailed notes, and I'll get the organizational chart to Ms. Hammond today to add to Minute Track. Again, if someone does not want the very thick packet, the reports and the analytics for social, website, et cetera, are on Minute Track as well. So it just depends on what version you'd like it in. We can give you the paper. Anyone else for paper?
No, but I would just mention that it's very interesting that both Instagram and Facebook, our largest population is 34 to 65 women.
Yes.
They're the ones that are accessing it the most. So I think just reiterating what I said, that we should think about kind of now knowing that we have that data, really think about like, you know, what are our key messages, who are our intended audiences, and then how do we really want to maximize these separate platforms because they have benefits that, you know, are unique to each specific one.
Mayor, I just had one thing, and it may require us, I guess that's what I'm hearing too, because we get media requests. I'm not the best at responding to any of them, but I will, no, seriously, I will work harder, because some of us don't respond to media requests, and it's a good opportunity to promote things, and so I think we have to work on that. And then my last question, we have in here media influencers. Who would that be? Who is that?
You and your counterpart.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, if that's us. Okay.
Yeah, we collectively don't have the following that we need to get the messaging out. So that needs to be part of that social media discussion outside and
I
who
gotta
you
do
target.
better.
Because
Yeah, I gotta do.
building up that following, how you do that, following those analytics, getting those views, and all of that it's critical today, because not only are we trying to make sure that we're getting all the information out to folks, but we also need folks to see what's happening in Columbia, because every conversation I have outside the city limits, people are like, why aren't y'all telling people about Columbia? You know, when you tell them what we have here in our community, from businesses to assets to everything, they're shocked. Because they've always marked us off as, you know, just, you know, a government gray town, and we're not. We're a vibrant city. So I think it's very important that we do that. I would ask, since we've completed this, thank you, Ms. Yutzi, if at a point of personal privilege, I would like to ask Ms. Lois, thank you for being here, who changed her schedule around. She is from the JAG program, so that she could explain to everybody a little bit more, because I think there was some questions. I know I heard from Aaron Bishop this morning. I mean, he's so excited that we're moving forward. We want to thank the governor and all the folks who are making this opportunity possible for our community. But if we could slide her in, because I know she moved her schedule around to be here, so that she could answer any questions, and then we'll get back on track, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Ms. Lois, the podium is yours. Thank you so much for being here.
Do you mind stating your full name for the record, ma'am?
My name is Elaine Midkiff, Lois Elaine Midkiff. Everybody, they did my business card up at my new office with Lois, and that's why there's a lot of confusion about that. But Elaine Midkiff is what I go by.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your introduction, Mayor Rickman. And I had the wonderful opportunity a few weeks ago to come in and talk with a handful of people here at the city and explain to them the JAG Advantage. And Mr. Taylor knows full well, because when the program first came to South Carolina about 17 years ago, it was housed in the Department of Commerce, at which time he was actually the Secretary of Commerce. So he knows very well about the program, was really one of our early supporters in helping us to expand. The JAG Advantage is that we take these diamonds in the rough, our children, the youth, our future. We take them, we work with them, we give them work and life skills that have been developed by business as what is lacking in emerging workers. And then what we do is we train these students on those life skills, whether it's managing a bank account or showing up to work on time. We're trying to help them to want to take advantage of what life has to offer them so they take ownership for their futures. And that's what we're all about, is we're trying to teach children that are kind of falling through the crack. On average, the population we work with has 7 barriers to success. Maybe it's their their home environment, maybe it's they're economically disadvantaged, maybe they have some social behavior issues going on, maybe they've been engaged with the law before. We take them, we work with them where they are, we go to them at their level where they are and help them overcome those challenges. And if we can't overcome them totally, we help them to learn to manage them so that they can go on to have a very rewarding, self-sustaining life. Right now, we're currently in 24 schools. Again, we've been here for 17 years, and we have helped hundreds of thousands of students in South Carolina during that time. And we not only work with them in school, we don't just drop them when they graduate. When they graduate, we work with them for 1 year after graduation to make sure that their success plan is sticking. And if for some reason life happens and it's not working, we help them determine another path, an alternate path, so that they will have every opportunity to succeed once they leave the high school environment.
Could you just maybe talk a little bit? You've been in Richland 1 at C.A. Johnson. I think it's a 92% success rate,
Yes, sir.
I think, over the history. Maybe you could just talk a little bit about that, since that's right in our backyard.
About C.A. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
We were fortunate enough to have partners with AT&T, and they invested in the program so that we could take it. They had a little bit of vested interest. The lady that was in charge of the community investment actually graduated from C.A. Johnson, and she made that her partner with us as we expanded into another school, and it's been very successful. We've been there, I think I said 13 years. Is that
Yes,
what I told
ma'am.
her the other day? And it's just, again, we're working with students that might have been a CD student, and by the time we leave them, once they take ownership of themselves, their grades go up, they graduate, and they go on to successful opportunities. I did have the opportunity to talk with Superintendent Witherspoon the other day and Dr. Brossard, and they are just so excited about the possibility of bringing these programs to their other schools, because you never want to give one to one school and not the others, as a leader. So we're real excited about that opportunity. Are there any questions I can answer for anybody? Yes? High school.
Ed, please use your microphone.
Give me a lavalier so I can run my neck.
We work,
Grade levels?
we work with grades 9 through 12. We have other programs, but the
Grade
one that
out,
we're
not
talking
count.
about right now is our multi-year program for high schools.
What is the usual funding sources for this? Is your organization a private 501c3?
No, we're not. We're supported by agencies. For instance, I started off at the Department of Commerce, and then I went to the Department of Employment Workforce, and I landed at the South Carolina Technical College system now with Dr. Tim Hardy. And it's just a win-win relationship because we have emerging students, and they have the free training for our students to go into right now with the technical college and give them the skills and the trades that they need to support our communities.
What's a typical curriculum?
The curriculum we have, if a student, first of all, they get 1 credit hour for taking it as if it's an elective, and they can be in the program for 1 year up to 4 years. So they could get up to 4 Carnegie units of education by being in the program. You asked me another question I didn't answer. You asked how we were funded. Okay. Initially, we were funded by Workforce Investment Act money, which later on became WIOA money. Right now, the governor has taken a very active interest in our program, and he is funding us, and actually, he is going to attempt to get us passed as a line item for a recurring funds request.
Ms. Mink, let me add a couple of things. First off, you really target the most at-risk kids
Yes, sir.
as they're coming out of the 8th grade. I mean, and
It's our
each,
critical point.
yeah, and which,
We heard
which.
that
yeah,
yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. So that's number one. And in this proposal, we're going to put, I think, a JAG person in each high school in District 1. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
It's phenomenal. A typical JAG person today handles about 60 students. Is that the case?
If they're brand new, it's 45 to 60,
So
depending.
we're talking about making an impact
Right.
on some almost 600 young people in the city. And I will tell you that the South Carolina JAG program has been one of the finest in the United States for the last 10 years.
Thank you, sir.
Or even 13. I mean, it's really been amazing. The graduation rate statewide on the participants in the JAG program, again, and we're talking about some of the most at-risk young people that we deal with, has been 94%, somewhere plus or minus that.
We have actually gone up since then. We're up around 97%.
Think
right now.
about that. 97% of the targeted most at-risk kids. And frankly, this is the first time I've seen anybody do it district-wide. Lots of times it's been in some of the most desperate high schools in the state. 97% graduation rate. I used to use the example, it's like a truant officer with a smile on his face. This person is somebody that's going to care about these kids.
Yeah. Well,
If they're not in school, right, Lois, they'll come find them.
right. The secret sauce is our specialist, the person that we put in each of the schools that we have trained on 3 different levels, project-based learning, so that they can actually be actively involved in what we're learning, and we fit our competencies into that project-based learning. The second is we give them employer engagement. And employer engagement exposes them to the labor force, so they have an attachment to work. Some of these students have come from a home where they've never seen anybody go to work in their life. And so that's very important that we show them that work is not intimidating, work is doable, and you too can do it. And the third prong of that is trauma-informed care. Again, we go to the students where they are, we identify what their needs are. Sometimes it takes us months to really find out what the needs are, but we identify the challenges that they're facing. And, if they're already parenting, we can't change that, so we're going to teach them how to cope with that. If they are a teenager, we can certainly teach them how to prevent pregnancy. So that would be another way that we're reaching out. If we see at-risk behaviors, we can guide them. The trust that that specialist builds with that student is what makes it successful.
That was the part that I especially appreciated is to really implement trauma-informed care takes a lot of time. And to have such high outcomes in terms of kids graduating and going into the workforce or having these, positive factors post-graduation is pretty remarkable. And so, I'm really excited at the thought that this could be something that's instituted that's very much backed by science as well in terms of, removing some of those hardships that teachers, frankly, right now just don't have the capacity to do with all of the other requirements that they have to meet both for the district and national standards as well.
And we're very data-driven. We have a national affiliate, Jobs for America's Graduates. We're in 39 states across the network, and we record everything we do. If we don't record it, it didn't happen, so that we can come back out and do analysis. We have 6 national standards that on an annual basis we're expected to meet or exceed, and we have done that successfully for the last 14 years.
Lois, let me just, two things. First, let me congratulate and thank the mayor, and Mr. Bishop, the governor, and Dr. Hardy at the Technical College System. I mean, for them to come together and put this for the city of Columbia, I think is fantastic. And the second, would you clarify, just for the record, that this program doesn't take teachers out of the classroom.
Right.
This uses, and I would just share with everybody, if you're a Carolina basketball fan and go way back, Melvin Watson, who played point guard for USC, was one of the
Number
first.
10.
Yep, was one of the first JAG interaction folks we had up in Rock Hill, and he's gone on, and he wasn't certified to be a teacher, so this let him get into the school, and I think today he's the head basketball coach at either Rock Hill or South Point, one of them up there.
We have an agreement with the Department of Education that because we're having this blending of learning and workforce attachment, that the teacher does not need to be certified. Actually, I've been operating JAG programs for about 28 years now. And I have found that a lot of our best specialists are ones that aren't certified because they're not tied to the classroom. You get so comfortable in that environment, that employer engagement piece becomes more challenging. So we're very happy that we have that. We have course codes for all our classes, so they're getting credit for them. And I don't know, any other questions I might be able to answer?
Ms. Herbert?
I did have one, because my understanding is, so we currently have it at C.A. Johnson. How long is the timeline to get up and going at the other 7 schools that are proposed?
We had put a proposal on the table, and Superintendent Witherspoon would like to start it next semester if possible, this coming spring semester.
So in January, so
Yep.
have we hired the folks to start off? And
And I've already talked with my national office as far as making some accommodation, because again, we're going to meet you where you are, okay? The biggest thing is serving these students. We might be starting a couple days late. If they hire somebody in-house, they can hire them right away. If they hire externally, then we have to go through, the human resources process, which might take us a little bit longer. But because all of them are locally, and myself and my trainer are here locally, we can give them all the support they need to get up and running whenever they get ready to go.
And when they get ready, who is they?
Whenever the school, the principal, we always have
Okay.
to have his buy-in and
Okay.
the specialist.
We actually are going to have a potential to do the 9 high schools in Richland 1.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure, because I was trying to figure out how we're going to get it up and going by January. But we all understand it may not be January. It may be a little bit later based on,
It's my understanding
Hiring.
they're posting the job, they're in the process of posting the job right now. I won't have any control over the hiring process at all. But it's my understanding their desire is still to start in January.
I will tell you, the Richland 1 is very excited about the opportunity. They did not know about some of the pluses of expanding, and with us coming together, I think it's a way for us to partner with Richland 1 to make a big difference in our community. I can tell you, when I called Commissioner Bishop, I thought he was going to jump through the phone, because he said, if you go look at our website, our Blue Ribbon project that we talk about a lot is this JAG program at C.A. Johnson. He said it just has made a powerful difference, and having the opportunity to offer it at all of our schools is unbelievable.
Dr. Meandre Prince, one of the executive directors for Richland School District 1, should be here this evening when you have the item on your council agenda. So maybe he could answer some of those questions.
Where they are in the
like
process.
process questions.
Do you have anything else to add? Thank you for making time. I know you had to juggle around, but I
That's
thought it was
okay.
very important that everybody hear from you, and can't thank you enough for elevating us in the chain, because just so y'all know that there was only 25 opportunities for this to be part of the governor's program for the next 3 years. So we took a big chunk of the slots for Richland 1, and I think that means a lot. So thank you.
But that's why we're here, to meet you where you are, Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you. Well, moving right along, I was asked for a few.
Mr. Mayor, may I have just a word of personal privilege?
Sorry, Mr. Reverend.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Look, I think this is one of those programs that is, and should have been a priority for us years ago. Our students, it bothers me a little bit that we are getting ready to do something very innovative, very positive within our community, and of course within Richland 1. One school with a JAG program. The other schools, of course, has an opportunity to become JAG, for lack of a better word, institutes. I'm just glad we're doing what we're doing. If it's going to cost us, it's well worth spending the money. Our kids are an investment, and you're looking at kids from 9th grade to 12th grade. And of course, primarily what I will ask the person later on today, she's going to be at, or he is going to be at council today.
Yeah.
What's the data in terms of the success rate at the end of a JAG program going into college?
For 13 years here in Columbia, it's been 92% success rate.
That's just one school.
Yeah. So think about what that would do. Think about the people we're affecting right now. I think
You're exactly right.
9 schools at 50 to 60 kids. You're talking about almost 600 kids that we have an opportunity
To change.
to change their
change.
trajectory. And I will tell you, Reverend McDowell, yesterday I went to Lee County Correctional Institution, and I sat down with the Academy of Hope. And the biggest pieces of advice those guys gave us, don't wait till later in life to go help these kids. Help them now, young,
Absolutely
13 to 15, or you lost them, and give them opportunity.
Well, instead of scared straight, you go to the JAG program. The JAG program, of course, gives that student the inspiration to move further. And so I'm all for it. Let's go with it. If it's an MOU we need to do, let's go ahead and do it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wilson.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, Reverend McDowell. Mayor, we have, or I will lead us through a few updates on some pending and plans and studies that are some pending, some in process. And I was requested by Mayor Rickaman to give an update on a few of these items.
Justin, these aren't all packeted together.
So we'll start with the police redistricting, which is really more than that. It is a CPD field operations workload assessment and redistricting plan. We've got just a few quick bullets. I'm gonna try, I didn't intend to spend a lot of time on this. This is meant to be quick hits, but obviously if you have questions, just stop me after each one. So this assessment that Chief Holbrook can also help answer questions about is really comprehensive for the workload of the department and redistricting plan, designed around the premise of a guided, supported project in which the project team is led by the consultant that we've hired. To the degree possible with available data, the consultant will work with the larger team on the following focus areas, and you see them in front of you: the geographical workload, balancing of the regions, the realignment, response zones, and reporting areas to better equalize the workload. And you all have heard Chief Holbrook talk about this for a while as far as the geographical redistricting by an analysis of the calls by geography, looking at where no patrol units are available and informing the assessment of the boundary changes. The response time analysis will be included to completely understand where our service call efficiencies can be improved upon. The call data processing and analysis to organize, examine, and interpret the data to understand the distribution across the workload during all times of the day, guiding equalization of the workload among the field operations, regions, response zones, and reporting areas. And of course, the staffing assessment itself, establishing that baseline workload volume, administrative and benefit time consumption, and what our desired availability of proactive community policing related model, how that time from between the officers is being allocated. So at this point in time, we are looking at the final report being comprised of 3 key areas: the redistricting analysis that will recommend changes in the alignment of the patrol boundaries, represented in writing and GIS imagery; the workload and staffing analysis to incorporate the charts, tables, written analysis detailing the needs versus the current allocations, so we can optimally align our staff in the field, and any additional recommendations. And Chief, I don't know if you want to add any context and timeline for us here.
Do we have the consultant already on duty?
Yes, sir.
We do that. Ms. Wilson, that was an outstanding interpretation of that slide. Thank you. I mean, it really was. I couldn't explain that any differently.
welcome.
We started November 11th with this consulting group. We've had 3 meetings. We've established a team with IT, our folks, GIS, which is a very integral part of this, and they'll continue to work collaboratively. A lot of data crunching initially, and again, the ultimate goal, as we've discussed it, as we build our budget out last year and presented to you all, is that we really take a better look at how to better realign our city and our police regions to have more equitable police service, and also make a determination for strategic planning where we want to best locate our region or field offices, however we land on interpreting that.
Any questions regarding that?
I have any questions for?
When's the report
Chief?
due?
This will be a several-month undertaking. I'll update you in a few months, where we're at. Yes, sir.
Will they look at the real estate assets that the police department has and how they might be shifted around and whether we should rent or own and HQ things and things like that?
Yes, sir. So in the additional recommendations, I think once we know our region, a better understanding of how we want to define our regions, we can look at our existing 17 locations and see what we, can potentially eliminate, consolidate, relocate that, again, gives us better profile, better efficiencies, and better response times.
Apologize for stepping out. Just want to, this survey like this takes a little bit of time to do, I would
Yes, sir.
imagine. So we're looking at a completion date in late 23, 24?
It'll be mid-23.
Chief, does it take into account growth corridors,
What?
annexation, growth corridors?
Yes, sir.
Growth down Garner's Ferry, for example,
Yes, sir.
and all that?
We want to, present recommendations based on our current data, but we'll work closely with GIS and development to see what's, as we've seen some of the development information they've shared, they have, current, what's, what's on the list and some future, programs, so we kind of know where we might need to grow and where annexations may take us.
Can they provide us, I've mentioned this to Mr. Palin a couple times before, there's a calculation that we use in our annexation that I think is a little bit almost aggressive as the cost-benefit analysis the Commerce Department uses. I mean, can they look at that and give us some recommendations on how to calculate the cost of annexation for law enforcement when they're doing that type of thing?
I think we can do a pretty fair job on doing that.
I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the chief?
Thank you,
All
Chief.
right, thank you, chief.
So the next item, the compensation and classification study. As most of you are well aware, we've had an ongoing engagement with Evergreen Consultants. We have utilized them for previous full-blown comp and classification studies, which quite frankly, the best practice would say every 6 years, Ms. Benjamin, at a minimum. They're 5 probably. So we're beyond that, and we know that we've had to go ahead with the market conditions, issues of recruitment and retention, particularly in public safety, and this council's wherewithal and willingness to move us forward. We've had to go ahead and do what we had to do with police. But in addition to that, I'll talk in a moment about some of the other areas of the city where we have also gone ahead and made adjustments, particularly to get some of our lowest paid employees to a livable wage. With that said, a few of the council members here of late, as I was preparing for this, asked for additional information. We've seen some of our surrounding communities making moves, doing some kind of bold initiatives with comp and class, and how that might impact or affect even further our employees. So the information that I'm giving today, to be honest, I hadn't planned to give all of it today, because I knew that as we go into the budget process, for me, we had the information. We've been working with Evergreen to do some soft studies, and we have the data. But I wanted to use that data to inform budget decisions and work with you all through a different budget process that we're going to engage in starting in January, with that idea of priorities and zero-based budgeting and a new platform. All of that's still coming, but this is giving you a little bit of a snapshot of the information that we do have. So with that said, I'll try to quickly go through this. I'll say up front, my recommendations here, I think would be better served, particularly if there's any interest in doing something more immediately with fire, for example. I think it ought to probably be referred to the Public Safety Committee to digest this better. But I was asked to present it, so I'll give you a little bit, and if the council is willing, you could make a referral to Public Safety for us to follow up on some of these items if there's an interest in doing it quickly. The police pay was tackled first, as I mentioned, to address recruitment and retention challenges that Chief Holbrook and his team were facing. I think that's well underway and has been received well. There's a lot of expectations there. There's a lot of steady progress, I would say. You know, we want it quick and fast, but the recruitment effort is what it is, and I think there's some other additional thoughts being shared with recruitment efforts, being shared with Chief Holbrook, and I'm very encouraged by the numbers I'm seeing each month. I hope y'all are getting the portal, and we're starting to share more data with you monthly on staffing. We were through that study comparing 22 similarly situated organizations in the state, and that was a very helpful comparison. Based on Evergreen Consultants' market study, fire salaries have also been looked at, and they are approximately 12% below other departments within the state, which is in line with the fire chief's internal analysis that they had done. So we kind of looked at it two ways to validate some numbers. And with that said, you can see on the next slide, I'm going to jump to it real quickly. I think it's the next slide. I asked them, they have a lot of information based off different categories of things geographically in the state. To me, what's most informative is the annual call volume. Our agency is the second highest in call volume in the state. In comparison, you can see for yourself, and I asked them to take the top 6 or 7 departments, look at the salary, look at the hourly rates, and they were already requesting based off the data, $15, getting to $15 an hour. If you were to take the average of these top 6 or 7 departments in the state, you get to $15 an hour. So I was looking at volume, call volume, workload, et cetera, of the top 6, and you can kind of validate the proposed $15 an hour. With that said, a solution to get us there, we would increase the starting salary, the base salary, to $43,800 and adjust all the salaries by $2.60 per hour to minimize compression.
What would be the threshold of that? Because if you go into the study, and I haven't seen it, but I'm guessing based on the past studies, there's a threshold, there's a certain threshold that it's a number where everybody from that level below is the target, and that, you know, somebody making $100,000 is not the 12% differential. It's the folks underneath. Is there a threshold to this?
Where we wouldn't go above?
Well, I mean, you're looking to increase the folks who are in the starting pay and who are in the 3 to 5 years. If the retention levels are the same things that we've dealt with in other public safety entities. So my question is when they did the study and they talk about 12%, we're really talking about the guys on the ground, not.
We are talking about the guys on the ground, yes, sir. But in order to avoid compression, as we did with police, the progression, still continues as far as if you were to add or give a bump to everyone in the system. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question the way you're asking it, but, and if I can get through this slide, then I can have Chief Jenkins maybe speak to that a little bit better. The cost would be approximately $3.3 million. Obviously, we would seek, and I haven't had the opportunity to do this because this has been off the cuff of being asked of me, and I don't like to do that to my colleagues in other jurisdictions, but I will have a conversation with the county administrator. Obviously, they have just done a public safety increase themselves, and I'm sure he'd be happy to talk about this with me.
Do we know
So
what the
they're-
comparison is? Have you been able to compare it to what what they've just done? Because they may have already covered it.
They have not covered fire in what they've done, no, sir. The straight pay hours of FLSA overtime is included in these numbers because that FLSA overtime is mandated. And the total cost of the increase is listed here. So the city portion would be the 1.7 million, the county portion would be the almost 1.6 million. And the cost of fund, if we were to look at just getting through the rest of the fiscal year, is broken down city county around $869,000 for the city and $796,000 for the county. Not to go too deep into this, like I said, we can take it to Public Safety Committee. There's some funding sources that I can help, propose. Jeff and I have talked about it a little bit, not in depth. I do think the fire department has a little bit of flex in their budget right now that we could, get through the rest of the fiscal year with some funding that's in their budget. But it wouldn't cover the entire $869,000. We would have to look at a couple other sources that I can recommend.
I would support it going to the Public Safety Committee for the mere reason that this is not an afternoon conversation. This needs to be an in-depth conversation because this plays into next year's budgets and the years after and the years after, and really having the detail. And obviously, anybody can attend and listen. You can't participate. But if you're not on the committee, but I do think that that's the proper channel for this.
Mr. Mayor, the only thing that I would probably, and I agree with them, Mayor, is that if we send it to Public Safety Committee, that it be a priority.
Digest it and report it straight back.
No, I didn't ask you about digestion. I asked you about priority.
It'd be number one. Probably.
Thank you, sir.
And I would just ask when we do that discussion, I know we've had some talks about how due to shortages, we've had to take overtime and how that's factored into kind of the average salary when we count some of those additional funds and what the reality looks like in terms of, your base pay might be 30,000, but if everybody's having to do overtime, what does that actually look like in terms of take home pay at the end of the year?
Maybe chief, but I'll ask the city manager, you might need. The call volume, that 34,000 call volume, does that count medical calls too?
Yes.
Is that medical and fire calls?
You're meaning like
Anytime the trucks-
EMS?
Howard, please.
Yes.
The microphone.
Does the call volume?
Sally Hammond calling me.
Does the call volume include medical calls that we're supporting EMS?
It includes all calls.
Every call.
But one thing I do want you to keep in mind on that paper you got, Horry County, that includes their medical calls as well. So, but when you start looking at the fire calls, nobody runs more fire calls than we do.
Okay, so Horry County is fire and EMS, and is Horry County is like Richland, Columbia situation where we cover the entire county?
Well, they cover the county, but you still got Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach down there as well. But they cover everything else that's in the county.
Okay.
But you're not covering the EMS. That number doesn't include the EMS calls of Richland County EMS, does it? No.
Not Richland County's EMS call, but just on the calls that we physically
You're dispatched to,
run.
Right.
You're first responding.
So there could be situations where they call EMS and then fire gets dispatched that may not be captured here. The Richland County EMS.
Any call that we run
Okay.
is captured.
When does that county bump go into effect?
My understanding in the first part of the year, I don't know exactly when, but I think they were floating vacancies to get it done.
I do want to say one thing, and I totally agree with Mr. Taylor's analogy about being in the valley. We don't, and that's what we try not to be, is in the valley, because one thing we got to keep in mind is that we are the center, we the hub of government in the state. And I don't think that the city of Columbia, Richland County ought to be in the valley, because we're in the valley and we got all these other entities above us. I think that the city of Columbia ought to be above everybody, because again, we are the center of government in this state. And we want to make sure we got the best talent and we retain the best talent. And if we don't do this plan, just be candid with you. Right now, we're already losing people because we're not paying them. And I just think that is.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say this because we also don't show people people just, every time I have a conversation with somebody, they show me the base pay. Nobody's made base pay in 5 years. So I don't say that we're not in a position that we need to address this, but we got to address multiple issues as well. You know, we can't say that we're at 92% and then we have trucks not running and other stuff. So I think it's very important. That's why I think this conversation needs to go to the Public Safety Committee to make sure that we're addressing all of it as we move forward. And I think we've been very clear that we support our city employees, but you know, there has to be some balance as well. It's very important that when we have discussions, we have real discussions about exactly what those numbers are, why we have the issues that we have. We need to talk about making sure that we're doing everything to get people to work when they're assigned work. And because it puts everybody's at risk. This isn't just about numbers. This is about making sure that everybody stays safe, most important.
Well, one thing I can say is this: you hear tell about certain people not responding to calls, but you do not hear anything about the fire department not responding to calls.
I'm not the one posting stuff on social media, so.
Social media.
Uh-oh.
And Mr. Mayor, I just would say, I support addressing the salaries. I do think at the committee level is the right place, and I would just have to say, we do have some firemen that make over $50,000 a year in overtime, and part of what we should do as we look at this, much like the chief did on the police department, is making sure we allocate the overtime that's necessary in a fair way. So especially those newer hires and folks that are at the starting end of the pay chain have the ability to take their incomes up to a better level as well.
Absolutely.
I agree with that.
Do we have a timetable on the renegotiation of the agreement with the county for fire service?
It's a year out.
A year out.
So your next Public Safety Committee is scheduled for January 24th at 1 o'clock. Is that, y'all want to, that time?
We'll invite the chief to come.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask for some information from HR like we did before. And as long as we have that information a week or so before that meeting so we can review it, I'd be fine with that.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council. Continuing that conversation as,
It's Tina, Howard, and Joe.
I'd be remiss if we're going down the path of discussing compensation in class to not also mention the staffing challenges in departments and divisions that we've tried to address as they've come up. Public Works, wonderful creative ways of addressing some of the recruitment challenges they were having, water operations, customer care, and parks and recreation. We increased our hourly rates to $14.50 for many of those positions to help us with the recruitment and retention of the staff. And that was the first step in establishing a livable wage for our employees. The challenge continues. Really concerned right now with fleet. 911, we had made some adjustments for them, but the vacancy rate is also there. Another area where it's a potential discussion with the county as we're looking to that transition where those employees will report to the Richland County Sheriff in 2024. To continue establishing a livable wage for employees, we recommend adjusting all pay grades using the $14.50 an hour rate as a benchmark for our positions. Based on a market data survey conducted by Evergreen Consultants, the salary ranges of non-public safety staff are approximately 5.4% below market, and salary ranges for similar positions in other surveyed organizations at the 60th percentile. So the solution here would be to increase the pay ranges to reflect hourly rate minimums of $14.50, adjusting those pay ranges 5%, and bringing all staff to the new minimums. Again, this is going to affect a lot of that back office staff that didn't get any of the increases, with many of those folks that we addressed kind of piecemeal in the field, those areas that I previously mentioned. If any salaries are above the new minimum, then the employee would get a 3% increase, and that cost is estimated to be $2.3 million to implement.
How many people is that? What's the number?
Pam, do you have that handy?
Is the 2.3 a yearly number?
It would be annualized, yes, sir.
I mean, Ms. Wilson, for me, it's very difficult to make a comment on this today. I mean.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we need to see salary histories, because there were some fairly significant raises made over the last years and COVID bonuses. We need to see what a projection of our health insurance cost increase is going to be, because that has to be taken into effect. And frankly, I'd like to see the Evergreen study. I mean,
Yeah.
before we even continue any discussions on this. I just think we need to have the data before.
Yes, sir. Well, again, I wanted to give you a bit of an update, a flavor for kind of the information that we do know, and we can certainly,
Because this would be something we'd be
Continue.
looking at next year's budget, the 23-24 budget.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Is the preference to bring it to you through that process as we start to have the budget meetings, or did you want to refer?
I think the sooner you can
overall?
share the information, the more we can digest it, so that when we get to the budget, we're not playing catch up. We're actually ahead, and probably need to provide it in a document that's printed so we make sure everybody reads it.
Yes, sir, we will do that.
Next month is the start of the budget process.
Believe it or
is.
not.
It is.
We just
Very
got
true.
approved.
Okay, again, another update on a management review that was requested through the retreat organizational and management review. The purpose, as expressed by City Council during the retreat, was an assessment to ensure the efficient and effective delivery of services, assisting the city manager and city council in best practices, examining the efficiencies organizationally, analyzing the organizational and management structures that will help us streamline and maximize our services and being efficient. The proposed scope of work is listed here for you. I don't know that I need to read through all of it, but it essentially is looking at, how we're managing across the city, organizational structures, staffing levels, internal operations, and looking for any newer creative ways to do things better. Via staffing models, looking at, our organizational charts against our peer organizations throughout the country, best practices, but also keeping in mind the goals and objectives that you all have identified through your strategic priorities and outcomes. We would seek to improve any of these opportunities in our various departments operationally and procedurally, utilizing technology related to our current service delivery, and making practical recommendations to improve the quality of what we do and how we do it. But of course, we always have to take into account different departmental constraints and what our resource availability is as well. I originally had started discussions with Evergreen Consultants after I'd done some of my own research regarding some local, within the state partners through some of my ICMA colleagues, looking at knowing that some of them do this. It was recommended that if we went that route from some of my colleagues, we would be probably looking at the Riley Institute and Charleston's staff to help with that. And capacity-wise, I'm not sure if they're available to us. So with Evergreen, we already had an engagement. They do have a different arm that does this type work, so I had considered that as well. But I think the desire sounds like of the council for this broader reach is probably going to be more effective for us to put out the RFP. With everything else that's has been going on, we're now ready to issue that in January, and we'll hope to move it forward as quickly as we can.
And you'll let us see the RFP before it goes out.
And then finally, we have been very active with our grants consultant. I know that the mayor has shared a lot of insight in a lot of his meetings with the Conference of Mayors and others about opportunities that have been presented, not just through ARPA, but otherwise. And so we did complete that process to engage various grants consultants to assist us, Kimley Horn and Michael Baker. Michael Baker actually has some sub-consultants, Con Resnick and Gatehouse. But you can see here the categories of grants that they would be seeking on our behalf to bring back to me and the staff as far as opportunities to share with you all. Some of the applications and proposals they've helped us with already are listed. You're familiar with, obviously, the Assembly Street Rail Separation Project. There's an EPA Brownfield grant that we're in the midst of submitting, the ARPA Stormwater Infrastructure Program, and of course, Dr. Bustles has kept us on task with the opioid settlement grant, and we did get that guaranteed political sub-fund application in on time. The proposals underway include, in anticipation of the NOFA, a DOE hydro plant upgrade application, an application for police K-9 opportunities, and then on the horizon, we have the discretionary sub-fund of the opioid settlement due in January. We have the State Infrastructure Bank application that we're pursuing, a HUD Choice Neighborhood Grant, other grants related to affordable housing, homeless prevention, and other programs. There's the potential for another RAISE grant application, but this time for the Assembly Streetscape, and a joint training facility for our public safety teams.
And City Manager, I just want to mention that for the opioid funds, there was another city that dedicated all of that to their homeless work, and they were able to connect it to that trauma-informed care approach. So there may be an opportunity there to support as we want to move away from general funds, given that this is a 10-year settlement, starting to use some of those funds for the homeless prevention.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions?
No, just excited to see the Choice Neighborhood up there.
Yes, sir.
It's gonna be a big one for us.
Any other questions? Okay, well, we'll keep you all informed of all of these activities. And thank you to the staff for always helping me pull this together. I really appreciate them very much.
And I think Madam City Manager,
Yes,
if we can kind of monthly get updates on the progress,
Yeah.
but also make sure that if we need to be making phone calls to folks,
Yep.
especially around these grant processes, that we're,
Okay.
as you know, I'll be in Washington in January, so if there's some folks we need to go look at and sit down with, we need to have that conversation. We need
Okay,
to,
definitely. And I
do
know
it.
Ralph will be helpful to us too.
absolutely.
We are now at the point to just make sure you all are comfortable with the city council meeting schedule. And I did, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, the parking study, that, I didn't have a slide on that one. Some of you had asked about it. We are finally getting the, draft. I haven't even seen the final version of it. So again, that's another one that would have been way too in-depth to analyze today. But we should have it within days, and I would love to have it referred to Economic Development Committee if council would be willing to do that.
Send it to ED. I think, look, the more we use the committee structure, I mean, I think that's why we set it up and why it's so important to have it balanced the way it is.
Yes.
That would suit me to get that and then come back with a recommendation, and, you know, we'll get those recommendations at work sessions so that people can ask questions. But let me remind council as well, when we have an agenda and we're at upstairs, look, there's an opportunity to ask as many questions as you want, clarify whatever needs to be done. But we also don't have to vote on everything that's up there that day either. If there are a number of questions or things that continue to linger on, we'll defer that. Please use the work session and our council meetings as opportunities to clarify, question, and improve anything that's before us. So just sometimes I think we don't feel like we can use that council meeting. It is still a working council meeting, so please, let's make sure that we use those opportunities to continue to move forward all the things that we have to do.
I appreciate that, Mayor. I think that this week in particular, we saw a lot of movement on the agenda. Obviously, it's the end of the calendar year, so I kind of am used to some of that. But I do want to make sure that we're responsive and we're giving you what you need and how you want it. I think there's at times when I'm getting different feedback from different ones of you of what you think would be best as far as when you're meeting or how you want information. So we put on here Erica and I because I got to keep the clerk happy and sane. And I want to make sure that in this myriad and flurry of movement, which I think may be what Mayor Rickham is talking about a little bit, of holding items or adding items, that we're just trying to, as best we can, stay on the same page about how we go about things. So what can we do differently, or what can I do better or differently to help you all get what you need? I saw some email traffic that said if we're getting something on a Friday or a Monday. I don't think you're ever getting anything on a Friday or a Monday unless it's truly like add this. There was the SEBA contract that we had already explained to you that it was coming with the updates and changes. But that came, we told you it was coming. That's an example of one I can think of. There's the JAG MOU that came because we were asked to put it on there. And that happens. I don't think that's that big of a deal, and we're fine with that. What I want to know is if you're asking specifically to get things sooner than the draft agenda on Wednesday. And if that's the case, then when do you want it? So I can back into our deadlines, because you all aren't privy to this, but I probably spend on an agenda review with the staff sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours, trying my best to make sure I'm forecasting questions you have, and I'm not going to get it all right every time, or I might miss something, but for the most part, I think we're getting it. And then on a Wednesday, we send a draft of that. So between Wednesday and Friday, which you do, a lot of you do, you'll send, hey, I need this, or I didn't see that, or can you clarify? So if that's not the system that is working best anymore, I'm just asking, it doesn't matter. We just want to do it the way it's going to work better for you.
Can I just share a couple things with you
Sure.
that would help me out a
Sure.
great deal? And this is no reflection on what's being done now, and it's no reflection on any department. I think we got too many consent agenda items sometimes, and we don't have enough explanation. I'll give you some examples that we're gonna look at today, for example, like the West Columbia water one that came down. You know, it has us approving a contract for X amount, but it doesn't specify in the original notice how much the city's portion of that was. You know, and so, I asked the questions, I got great answers. But if I had a write-up that was a little bit better, and I'll get to how I would suggest it be formatted, that said, this is how the split was, I wouldn't have had to ask those questions. Same thing on a really important one that's going to come up today that we need to pass. And I did speak with the staff, with the chief about, he's going to get the information I asked for, but it asked us to approve a contract for 1.9 million, but really it was 7 years, then it dropped down. So we're really approving almost a $7 million contract. So here, and lots of things like that. So what I would love to see us do, and lots of other entities and governments do it, would be to receive a binder on the Tuesday, a week ahead of time, that has the proposed agenda and has the detail where I can read these things. Because I'm just going to tell you, it's very difficult, and I admire Erica's ability to have kept it straight. When you've got a PDF agenda that has some things, a council other agenda that has other things, people like me that tend to do things on the weekend tend to try to review these things on Wednesday night or Thursday, and then, I'll just be candid. I've sat in the council meetings a couple times, and I'm looking at my stuff, and what I'm looking at ain't what you're looking at, because it got changed. And I think we need to try to, again, get a binder with more details on, just more of a write-up that has the printed copies on these things. I can tell you, the coordinating council, that's what they sent. They sent a binders this thick to the council members before every meeting. They had all the incentive proposals for the state in it and the write-ups, and it's all confidential, by the way, until you have your meeting. But I just think it would be such a big help to be able to sit down at one time, to not have to review this stuff twice, to have the details where we don't have the questions. And I almost think that there probably should be, consent agenda items on the second reading are not of a big problem for me. But on the initial ones, I think some of these things are of a stuff size that they should probably be read into the public record and voted on individually at a council meeting.
Councilman Taylor, just a part of that, do we define what consent is? Is there a definition of what should be included on the consent agenda? Is it?
Yes, Erica can participate in this discussion at the podium, but, typically it's your, things that we bid, agreements, whether it's, some professional services.
So is it mostly contracts that have gone through
It's
procurement?
things that I would say are in the normal course of business of the city. Now, that doesn't mean that what I'm hearing is, and how you feel about it right now today may not be how you feel about it as you've been a council member for some time. I don't know. I think that might be a little bit a part of this too, which I get that. That's why I'm asking the question, and I want to do it in a way that makes sense for this seated council right now. I would tell you, Mr. Taylor, I'm not going to say back in the olden days, but that's what it is for me. When we used to have council meetings and we start at 9 in the morning, I'm going kind of way back, and we would have the binders. I don't know that you get in the bind. I think it's a timeliness thing of when you're getting what, and again, that's going to affect a lot of change on our part of when we, Because we have to back into deadlines of when the staff gets us stuff and the ACMs get it and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, we used to print a lot of paper, and we got away from that over time. I think Erica will feel like we are devolving, but if that's what we need to do, we will certainly look at it. It's a budgetary issue too, to go back to binders and paper and printing costs. But I mean, Mr. Rickman was on council then, I guess.
Well,
It was, and
I
and
have
we
my
got,
staff put a binder
and we,
together every.
right, so we got to the point, and councils got to the point where, and I mean, this isn't just this council, it's all councils, things evolve, technology changes, and if we're trying to utilize it, there's some, I guess, responsibility on the count of each individual of what they require and what they need and how they get someone to print it for them or whatever it might be. So that's all, that's why we went away from the big old binders, is we definitely used to do that, and we had that. I just need to know, I think, binder or not, how much time in advance do you want it? Because I just want to be clear that you aren't getting it for the first time on Fridays or Mondays.
But Teresa, you can't, technically you are, because whatever you did on Wednesday, you got to do it again after Friday.
So for the,
And I'm just
Yeah.
telling you, you got to look at two agendas. Again, I admire this lady for what she's been able to put together for us. Because
Sure.
I mean, it's like a jigsaw puzzle almost. And maybe you're just, it's certain type items that are get put in a binder, and not necessarily the whole thing. Resolutions and things like that may be added at the Wednesday before the final agenda on the meeting. But the things that we're planning on voting on, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to be
so it'd
honest
2
with
weeks then in advance. is what
No,
you're saying.
as long as I had the binder on the Monday or the Tuesday before the council meeting on Tuesday, a week ahead of time.
The final item, though, that's what I think, that's where we're mixing hairs.
I
You're
want to
saying
make,
you
I'm
want-
talking about, there's two things. One is the information on what we're expected to vote on, especially on contracts. Because I'm going to share with you, I'm never going to get comfortable enough anywhere, anytime, any place to vote on a $5 million contract spending the taxpayers' money without reading it. I mean, that's just the way I am.
Sure.
But I think we should get a binder because I'm just telling you, you can, all these attachments, it's just difficult.
And I'm hearing you loud and clear.
And I would
Again,
rather have mine printed
okay.
and either mailed to me or me pick it up or whatever, and have that thing in print so we can read through it and make notes. That's the
Yeah.
other problem you got. The minute track is fine on questions, but again, it's just difficult on some of these things that,
Well,
I
it's
just
really-
would rather have a binder
I hear
on
you.
the item.
I don't I'm good with whatever you, that's why I asked the question.
what's up.
Here's the thing, it's funny, it's interesting for us because y'all are the first ones to start using Minute Track to the level that you're using it, which is interesting and great, but what I'm hearing is it really isn't suiting all of your purposes, even with you using it. This is the first council that's been using the portal and pushing out questions and all that. Again, what I'm hearing you say, and this is what I wanted to clarify, you want a full, finalized binder, items in their final form on the Tuesday before the council Tuesday.
But what I'm also saying, we can define what the items are to be in that binder, okay?
Okay.
For example, I would say in the binder, it should have the zoning packages when we're having zoning hearings. It should have the consent agenda write-ups.
Okay. So if we do, again, if we do that, I'm nitpicking it, but we're trying to be clear, because you're still gonna have to get it before then in order for you to then tell me, I still need this. Do you see what I'm saying? So we need to back up 2 weeks.
Well, no, I got a
is
level. What I'm
saying.
hoping that we'll have a binder that is complete enough where I'm not asking, I still need this. If I may have a question on something,
Well, I think that's what we're doing now in a week's time, and we're gonna have to add a week if that's what you want. Just
We're not
right
doing
here,
it in
right
a
now.
week's time. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
No, well, we are, but it's not.
You
You're
may
not
be, but
getting.
We're not seeing it a week ahead of time.
This is what I'm saying. So that's why I'm saying we got to go back another week. And you've answered my
Well,
question.
if it takes a week, that may be too much. I mean, if you want to, maybe
It
if we've
will.
got the binder on Wednesday or even Thursday before a council meeting on Tuesday.
Okay.
But again,
You want a final product that has pretty much all the
I want something that
answers.
has a write-up, like, and again, I use the West Columbia as an example, that has here's a perfect example.
Joe,
I'm sorry. I'm doing my imitation of Ed. No, for another example would be the.
If that was a good invitation, let's say amen and stop.
My man. Like there's a water issue on an apartment complex. You know, there should be some other, there may want to be some other information on that probably we need a little bit more time. So we don't have to defer a lot of the things that we're talking. I mean, I don't know. I just tell you, it's difficult going through that, then having to go through it again. And then again with two different agendas and so many attachments. I just think it's, God almighty, that's got to be work for you. I mean,
it's work. And I think what we're trying to, I'm just trying to
printing is
double
not
down
double
on it
work.
that
I mean, it's
we're
already
gonna
there. Somebody
pro-
had to input it, scan it, do all that. That's not. And if somebody wants to get it printed out,
Well,
it does. I
some
print
things are
out mine
getting
for a
lost,
reason.
too, because there were things that, I hear what you're saying about those type of items. I think there are other items where it is there, and I think because of what you're saying about finding it and looking for it or whatever, maybe that's why you're not seeing it, because sometimes it's
ma'am, I'm
there.
gonna tell you, there's things that are not there on Wednesday that are there on Friday. Sometimes when they do the final, and Erica has been kind enough for me in some instances
Yeah.
to send me an email that said, here are the changes that we made since Wednesday.
Sure.
So I don't have to
And
go
those
through the
do
whole-
include, I know, but those do include new attachments, like recommendations and things that we should have looked at a little bit earlier. That's all. There
And
are
I would-
examples of where that's
And I
coming
would
in
just think
Friday.
each department manager would put their, like purchasing would put their, their deals together. I'm not,
Yeah, but like the community promotions or the H-tags, they were there, but the responses were that they were not there. They were there like
but
the
again,
Wednesday
that's part of the
before.
problem when
Yeah.
you're doing it online.
Yeah.
You're looking at what you think is the last page and you don't realize you got to flip up one more time and
Okay.
because there's something else down
The
there.
binders would help with
Yeah,
that.
it was like one chart and the second page wasn't even relative to the chart.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because everyone doesn't work that way, and I guess it's because of what I've seen. I look at Wednesday as giving me an idea and making sure that whatever I wanted is there, like on the agenda. I don't look for attachments. I'm just going to tell you, don't give me anything before Friday, because I usually review in detail over the weekends. So that is how I use it, and I think that is because that's how it was done when I was here. Wednesday is this; these are the items, so you know what's coming, and like there may be where's my such and such that's supposed to be on the agenda, so it's added, and then the attachments. I mean, back then I don't think we ever. Well, the binders came out, and I'm a member of the binder days from DDRC, and they came and dropped them off to us on Fridays, but it was still on Friday before the Tuesday meeting.
Bring binders to council members' homes.
So
Literally.
that's just my insight and experience on that. The other thing I will say is, I think this is a good time if we want that much lead time and materials. I just think it's a good time for us to look at going back to the old schedule of first and third work session and council meetings, because staff will not be able to leave out of work session. And I think we do agenda review Wednesday morning, trying to get it to you, get the materials out on that Friday. Just, it's compressing the time. So my suggestion right now is just simply, if we could consider going back to the old days, which was 2019, right before the pandemic, of first and third Tuesdays with work session followed by,
the way we got it scheduled on this schedule is we have a council meeting every week. And I prefer to go back to the schedule where we had first and third, because you have the second and fourth and fifth off.
We only have 3 council meetings. You got 2 council meetings and a work session. The 4th week is your committee meetings, is the way it's structured, correct?
Committees meet almost every
every
Tuesday,
Tuesday.
sometimes on Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Exactly.
What we've done is listed council meetings on the first and third Tuesdays and work sessions on the second and fourth. There's a notation at the bottom that says work sessions will be held as needed. Now, if you would like for us to remove the second work session
My
from the fourth
understanding
Tuesday.
was, and we had this conversation months ago, that we were gonna have one of those Tuesdays to have all, so everybody knows, city council meetings, work sessions, whatever it is, committee meetings are on Tuesdays.
They are, but they are worked around work sessions and council meetings. And so we utilize every Tuesday to
Okay, well, I
have either a
misunderstood you
council
because I just
meeting.
heard the word Wednesday and Thursday, and that definitely is not Tuesdays.
Well, I have not scheduled them, but I've had requests to schedule meetings on Wednesdays and Thursdays,
I think
Mondays.
It might help to be able to do the committee meetings on the alternative Tuesdays.
I think part of what we want to do is make sure everybody has the information. If you want a binder, you don't want a binder, and I'm gonna be just real honest, part of why we're having this discussion is that not everybody's reading the material. That we're having to have extra work sessions to explain something that was already on the agenda. Now, just because you don't put something in minute track doesn't mean you don't read it, or you don't do it how you do it. I mean, everybody works differently. But part of the issue is I mean, we've had a bunch of incidences, y'all, when we're at the podium upstairs. People are like, well, I didn't know that. Well, all the information was provided well in advance of the meeting. So whatever we got to do to make sure that we're getting enough information, we have the ability. That's why, you know, I want everybody to understand work session and city council meetings are opportunities for discussion, and sometimes we have to change. You know, if we're going to try to get, I guess, the finalized version, to find a way to do this, because look, council is going to have questions or changes or something come up. So that agenda is probably going to change somewhat if there's major things. So how do we want to proceed with that? Can we say that on Wednesday we have all this information, and that we have a flag for Friday when the final goes out to the public that says, hey, this has come off, but you have all the information ahead of time?
He's asked me to review it twice.
So you all no
But
longer want to draft?
if you're the person who changes it, right? Let's say it was an issue that you wanted to change. How do you see that doing? Because you can't, we're not, on Wednesday, you're not gonna have a final, because we still could say there's too many questions, we want to pull it off. I guess I'm trying to figure out how we circumvent and create a system that works.
I
'Cause you
would-
can't do it 2 weeks in advance. It's almost impossible.
So, just one thing aside, is there any way, regardless of whether we use Minute Track or the binder, not to have 3 different versions? Like the PDF version of the agenda is different than what's on Minute Track, and then different from the public. Because I think we have additional information about the consent agenda items on our agenda in the beginning. And I like to use that to look at the notes on Minute Track, but is there a way to mirror that so that they're the same, or is there a reason why we can't?
I think what I hear you saying is that the portal, when you look at the portal, you may see just the title, which is council's asked to approve. You don't see the funding source, and then
Yeah.
it goes into the attachments. I can ask the software developer if there's a way to change that, but currently, I don't think so. And so you have an agenda which lays it all out, that has the extra notes in the purpose section, the funding source information, any charts that we add. And then you have the agenda packet, which has all of the attachments, and then you have the board packet, which is all the same agenda, but additional information is attached.
So is there a different way to deal with the portal? Because that seems to be part of the issue. Am I not correct?
Maybe y'all shouldn't use the portal. Do you not want to use the portal? we never had these discussions when we weren't using the portal, so maybe that's part of it too. I don't know.
I mean, the one benefit to that is I do like that when we send a comment, everybody gets it. And it's a great way, instead of these one-off conversations, which I think have resulted in some of the confusion, for everybody to know what's going on. Is it the most user-friendly, like, in 2022 portal? No, it's not.
No.
And I think that it's worth reviewing a better technology in the future. We still haven't gotten the app. Remember when you were trying to get us that? They still haven't given us an update for that.
But
And
we're
there's
looking at the software side of it and looking at different vendors. We were well on our way to selecting one, and we kind of slowed down the process. So you will be asked to entertain different demos and switch to a new product as early as next year.
And I think if there's a way with this one or a future product that might remedy what Councilman Taylor's requesting, is there are some softwares that when you do add a new attachment, it'll automatically send out an email that you don't have to do that says new thing posted, so that we know to click on it and go take a look. I think that's where the discrepancy is happening, is that you're having to manually do that, where it's not just, start or something that this was recently updated like you could find in other software.
That is one of my requirements
Well,
for the new system.
I'm fine with
A whole
using
lot more. There's a whole lot more. I hear your concerns. I don't think that we've come to a consensus. So I'd like an opportunity just to go back and review all of your comments and make up a possible recommendation on how we move forward in 2023, if you would allow me to do that. I hear your concerns loud and clear, and we're usually pretty good about putting our heads together and coming up with solutions that work for the group.
And we
Madam.
certainly are fine with delivering a binder. We just need to figure out, when that trigger is on the information.
I like a binder.
Okay. Teresa Knox wanted me to indicate that items are submitted by the departments and they go through a workflow process. So legal and all the various departments have to sign off on requests. You all don't see a lot of that, but we hear you loud and clear. We've taken good notes and.
Those, yeah,
Yeah.
just, I don't even think the timing would be as big of an issue if we knew when there was something brand new that you wouldn't have to flag for us.
Yeah, understood.
So
We didn't, when Ed and I came on, and maybe Will too, we didn't get meeting track training. And these youngsters
Neither do we.
are in there.
Figured it out.
Oh, yeah.
It's all button that said add comment here.
Well, it would seem,
So can we, just because we'll have January coming, can we focus on, let's try to get all the information on Wednesday to everybody in whatever form is best. And then let's, if we want to, if something is caused, let's just use the council meeting to defer it or whatever. And let's see how that works just for the first month. And then I'd love to hear what you have to say, because Erica, you deal with almost 90% of what we're talking about.
Because the last thing we want to do too, which I heard loud and clear from this council, is we want to move things forward. So I think sometimes in our effort to be I'm very literal, do what you say you want us to do. We don't want to hold up items either. So I know we've deferred some items now that honestly I think had you gotten the information maybe the way you wanted it, I don't know that they would have had to be deferred. So we don't want to get into that habit.
And I think that's what I wanted to clarify. So once the agenda comes out on that Wednesday, we will not say this needs to be deferred. We'll wait till we
can do
get
it
to
at
the council.
council.
We'll get to the council meeting and say, okay.
'Cause you might have what you
And in that way,
At the beginning of the meeting? Or
Yeah,
you do that?
we do it at the beginning of the meeting.
Can you do it at the beginning of the meeting or when the agenda comes up?
You could do it, we would technically do it at the beginning when we approve the agenda.
when Erica does her little sheet of paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When
We
Erica-
certainly want to
absolutely.
know in advance.
Also
Yeah.
gives us an opportunity to have clarity. I do think having some of these questions answered in the public setting is good for us, staff, and the public. So, I mean, I do think that sometimes we don't take advantage of the window we have there.
Like, here's an example kind of what, there's something on the agenda today that has us funding $1 million of water upgrades for an apartment complex. That we, decades ago, accepted the service on. Half the complex is in the city, half is not in the city. So and it's on the, I think it may be, I don't know if it's on the consent agenda or not.
We took it off.
I know, but I'm just using this as an example, because see, here's the questions that I would want to ask in advance. Number one, can we annex the other half? Well, let me back up. Number one, does it pay taxes or is it a nonprofit apartment complex? Number two, should we annex the other half and bring that tax value in to help offset some of that cost? Or in some cases, we may find that it's not, not to our advantage. We looked at one in Irmo the other day out there that it was in Lexington that we thought may be in our advantage not to annex it in. But, $1 million is a lot to ask everybody on the system to pay for one apartment complex that somebody that doesn't work for the city anymore probably did. But we need to, again, there's questions that need to be answered before that decision is made. Yes, I approve that contract.
But maybe what Mayor is saying is ask those questions at council. We aren't doing that, which we should.
Well, we can, and
And we don't have to vote on it.
but then
Yeah.
it gets deferred, and it comes back, and you deal with it twice. That's the only reason.
But
I'm
when
saying
you
that.
ask it on Wednesday, and we try to get the answer by Friday, that's not working for you.
Dr.
I'm not
Bussell
getting all
asked
the
the
answers
question,
by
and it
I did,
was
and I got
answered by
the-
Clint.
So that's why I kept saying,
That's what's.
we need, if we were pushing it back. So we'll factor that in. I guess. I mean, I don't know. If all the answers were in when Fridays was still complete, but see, unfortunately or fortunately, and I'm not picking on anybody, others on council look at it after Friday. Right.
So now all of a sudden, you got a
got
final on
questions on
Friday that's got
Monday.
more questions coming.
Which is why I keep saying, how far back do I have to give it to give y'all the time to all ask your questions when you need to answer? I don't know.
It's just more
Let me
so
say this.
flagging when something's updated, that's all.
I do
You know?
think it's not as many things that would have to be in a binder as you may be thinking. First reading stuff, second reading stuff wouldn't be in a binder.
Okay.
This is my way of saying it's time to go upstairs.
Well,
Can
before
I,
we-
for
before we go, I
the
wanna-
schedule, so did we decide that we're gonna keep the alternative as work sessions, or
Do it now.
the last one will be open for committee meetings? Can the last one be open for committee meetings and have a work session just on the second week? The last Tuesday?
The way this thing reads, every
But that's,
Tuesday.
but that's why we're here discussing
Right,
it.
thank
That's
you.
why Erica gave us a printout for you to
With
look
draft
at.
on it,
And
with
so we can
draft.
talk about it.
And
so-
also, Howard, I mean, when we started the budgeting process, we did need to be here
That's what I'm
that
saying.
often. I mean, I needed to be here that
here,
often. I know you're the expert, but I'm still
Look,
learning, so.
The majority of council said, and felt this way, that they didn't want to be here for 8 hours straight, working through all day and into the evening. So work sessions gave us a time, but also gives a time for questions around that come out of committees and other stuff. I think we ought to have, first, second, and third, leave the fourth open. If you got to add something, then we add it. Or we come to council early on a day to do that, but, not have work session both the second and fourth. I'm not sure that we need that.
Duly noted. Any other
Mayor,
changes?
you mentioned rotating a meeting in a district. Are we still talking about that?
We need to talk about that. It has come up several times.
Let's talk about that.
About having a district meeting once a quarter, if we can, or trying to split up and bring 1 and 2 together in a site like Busby, where 1 and 2 could easily come to, and then another site, we've used Cedar Terrace twice, that can bring 3 and 4 close together. So I think maybe trying to get 2 out in the community is a goal. I'll let Miss Erica figure that out.
Per quarter. And you said no meetings on the fourth Tuesdays.
Unless we have to
absolutely
call it-
necessary. So
unless
no
we-
standing committee meetings, no type of meetings. Is that what you're
I
saying?
would try to compress it, I mean,
Okay.
why-
I thought before you were gonna schedule it and then cancel it if we didn't meet, versus call it if we do. I don't care.
So there are no
So
standing
no committees, so I would have to move public
public
safety.
right.
I mean, don't y'all, look, I don't have a committee, so, I can say whatever. The reality is, does it make sense to do it on a day that you're already gonna be here, is I guess my point.
getting back to your 8 hours.
Let the committee chairs decide.
There you go.
Yeah, like I think I'm gonna move my
Let the committee
to the
chair
fourth.
decide that,
I like
Mr.
the
Mayor.
fourth Tuesday and just do mine earlier.
But let's do it on Tuesdays.
Let the committee chair.
That's fine if you want to do it on the 4th. Let's don't be doing Wednesday, Thursdays. That causes disruption across.
We hear you.
But no council or work meetings or work sessions on the
Yeah, there
fourth
might be
Tuesdays.
committee meetings. Yeah.
Yeah, we have 4 Tuesdays.
We need a catch-up day.
Understood. Thank you. Any other changes to the calendar?
No, I think the
And then-
cats are
I'm sure there
hurting at
will
this
be
point.
more changes.
I'm sure we'll be adding them right back on during budget session.
Exactly.
Erica,
That's us.
Tell him he's off the Christmas gift.
Tuesday, let's do a work session.
That'll be
That
more- that'll
will
be more
probably
changes.
happen. And then you all noted, the January 10th work session at 3, but, no council meeting. The council meeting is not on the 3rd any longer because of the,
I think it's very important for us to attend the county swearing in. We've never really gone, the majority of council has gone to that. I think we have a growing interest of more council members wanting to work closer with us, and I think this is a great way for us to show that gesture as we're moving forward.
No, it's 3.
It's 3, it's a weird time.
So, we are having a council meeting on the 10th in addition to the work session. Because
no,
we're-
no ma'am, just the work
Okay,
session.
so only one council meeting in January.
Yes, ma'am, as long as that's what you all want to do.
But that will change,
We're having
I'm
a work
sure.
session.
It's about to change now. I hear about to change already.
All right, folks.
Is that, are we good with that?
Add
Yes.
to it if we have
Yes,
to.
ma'am.
Are we? Because I'm hearing discussion at the
I'm
end of
sure
the
there's
day.
gonna be changes, but yes, ma'am.
That's executive session.
Let's get upstairs so we can get done.
Will you, you have one item? Are we good with the calendar?
I am, other than, we may want to have, a quick meeting on the 10th
A council meeting?
I'll tell you.
for judges.
And is that would be executive session?
It might be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Counselor?
We could,
Do an executive session on the 10th.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
we're doing it,
Yep.
we're discussing it.
perfect.
At the work session, okay.
All right,
And then your last item, this was added to this agenda as well as the next agenda, the standing committee structure.
Everybody happy with the committee there on, with the restructuring?
Mr. Mayor, let me ask you, you and I did talk about this a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Last week. Talk to me, the rationale. We reorganize committees.
well, we only
Will
a
we-
couple.
Will we do this again? Is this in stone now?
Well, it will be for the next year.
All right. So what I hear you saying is that after.
Well, we got new members.
All right, so what we're saying, the rationale, again, I'm asking that question, so you might say to me what of course you can say to the other folks there, the rationale.
Well, the reason we changed it is, one, we had some committees that weren't meeting. We needed to split economic development and community development up because there's too many issues to do that. We also had to make sure that we create balance. And we create balance, that includes diversity, includes at-large and district members and all split out. So we took 3 committees and changed them because the first option we had took away a couple committees, which then created an imbalance. Because right now, everybody chairs a committee and everybody serves on committees, so there's 3 assignments for each of the 6. If we had done that differently, then people would have been left out. We created a balance all the way across, just like we did before.
So we deleted technology.
It goes to administrative because there's limited there. Infrastructure goes to economic development. It also gave us an opportunity to put health, social, and environmental affairs together, which is something we're dealing with between homeless, and we get blue zones with the opportunity to work with Richland Memorial, who's going to pay for that health assessment, gives us an opportunity to also bring all those medical, I mean, look, we've talked about bringing in the 3 health systems, the public health, University of South Carolina Medical School on, look, we want to improve the health of our community. This gives us an opportunity to do that, which we didn't have before.
Just wanted to make sure all of us on the same sheet. That's it. Let me just say something before we leave.
Only if you say it in the mic.
I will. No, I don't know if you want me to say it in the mic or not. One of the things, Mayor, that I think that we need to be very sensitive to is that, you know, we've been talking about telling our story. One of the issues that, personal issues that I have, of course, is we don't talk enough to each other. We talk at each other and around each other, but we don't talk, and you and I talked about this. We don't talk enough. When there's something going on in my district, I should tell you. I should talk to others about what's going on. We don't do that. Hell, we sort of operate in a vacuum by ourselves. That's not the way it's supposed to work. There ought to be conversation that engenders itself around everybody around this table. Not just me and you, or me and you. There ought to be a conversation that is specifically. Now, I don't do that new social things, whatever it's called. I use a telephone, and I call folk. I'm just simply saying, Mayor, there needs to be some congealing of folk talking to each other personally, whatever the issues are, to talk to each other. I read emails.
We know.
I don't read them
I
sometimes.
know that too.
But I'll talk to you by phone. And I think that there needs to be a coming gelling together of what we do around this table.
Well, we were trying to use electronic devices to
well,
communicate, and what we've learned that the pigeon or a telephone is your preferred.
Well, a telephone, my pigeons stay at home. What I'm saying is that everybody's got a telephone. And if I need something, I'm going to call you. I'm not going to email you. I'm going to call you because that's personal.
But it's very important, Ed, as you say that, is that when things are going on, that you're sharing it. Everybody has a responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you, sir.